Good. So, would I like to suggest this afternoon is that we begin with a reflection on Lent and why it is important for us to use this opportunity of this season of Lent to reflect, first of all, to reflect upon some of the important questions that we discussed this morning, but also to deepen our practice. And then I'd like to just suggest we take a little break, not a break, but take a time of meditation together, and then we can finish this session with a question and answer. The purpose of Lent is, which this year coincides exactly with Ramadan. The purpose of these seasons, both in the Muslim world and in the Christian world, is to highlight the importance of certain essential elements of our faith and of the meaning of religion. And in the Gospel that we listened to on Ash Wednesday, where Jesus speaks about prayer and fasting and charity, the three particular elements of Lent, he warns us against external concerns. In other words, we don't want to become legalistic and think Lent is just about keeping certain rules or regulations. But the purpose of it is to help us to slow down, to take more time for prayer, more time for reflection, and more time to be aware of the direction in which our life is moving. Now, these three elements that traditionally make up Lent are really essential elements of religion in all forms. The first is what we might call asceticism. Asceticism, is that right? Asceticism comes from a passage in St. Paul, where he's speaking to the early Christians about their life in the Spirit. And he says, you have to take your life in the Spirit as seriously as if you were an athlete or a sportsman or sportswoman training for your competition. And you'll know that athletes preparing for the Olympics or for a big competition will train very intensely and for many for years in order to achieve their maximum performance. And the word that St. Paul uses,
performance itu performa ya, bukan itu juga.
the word that St. Paul uses for exercise or training is ascesis in Greek, and it simply means practicing.
Asketis artinya melatih.
Going to the gym, or going for a walk, or doing your physical exercise so that you can stay healthy. And we all know that if we don't do the right kind of physical exercise that it affects our mental state. And our mental state and our physical state are very closely interrelated. The best cure for depression is walking. If you feel depressed, walk. And go for a long walk every day, or make a pilgrimage like people do when they walk from the Camino to Compostela, or to some holy place. So, physical exercise, conducted in the right way, has a very beneficial effect upon our mind, our emotions, as well as upon our body. And therefore, when the body and the mind are in harmony, and we feel at peace with ourselves, then the spirit can manifest, the spirit can flourish, the spirit can grow in a marvelous way. So,
luar biasa.
So in Lent, many people will do some little exercise, physical, maybe fasting. You give up desserts. I like my desserts after a meal. I had to remember at lunchtime that I was not taking desserts during Lent, so I pushed it away.
Ya, jadi prapaskah itu banyak latihan fisik ya. Maksudnya fisik itu bukan hanya olahraga, bisa olahraga, tapi juga seperti tadi Father Laurence tidak makan dessertnya ya, makan kecil.
So you might find it helpful. When I was a boy, I remember we were quite excited by Lent. Actually, it wasn't a negative time. It was children can approach religious practice in a kind of playful way. We sometimes get too serious about it and too solemn about it. But I think in the same way when children approach a religious exercise, or when they come to meditation, we can learn from them, learn from the child, this gift of simplicity and joy. And when I first meditated with children and introduced them in a small group who came to the monastery, I was amazed at how naturally they responded to the meditation, how they liked it. They didn't have to come to the meditation group that we had for the children on a Saturday morning, but they wanted to come to be with their friends, but they liked the meditation. They liked sitting in the silence and discovering that there was a way of touching going into their heart, into their inner room. And I noticed that they never had complicated questions or doubts about meditation. They trusted. You know, a child will naturally be trusting, and they trusted that this. And we gave them exactly the same teaching that we gave to adults. Sit down, sit still, close your eyes, and then begin to repeat your word, your mantra, in your mind and in your heart. And say it gently and faithfully, and keep returning to it when you get distracted. And we gave them the same mantra, Maranatha. And they had no problem with this at all. Some of the children, depending on their personality, some were a bit more restless than others. But over time, the group learned from each other just to be quiet, to be still, and to be physically controlled. So I learned a lot from meditating. I learned a lot from meditating with those children in those early days, and I'm more convinced that the future of the church, the future of religion everywhere is going to depend upon the education of the heart. How we educate the heart of children in order to prepare them for life in the world. And the best preparation we can give them for the rest of their lives is the gift of meditation. Now, why am I saying this about Lent? Because in Lent we will highlight, in Lent we will highlight some of the essential elements of our spiritual life and our religious observance. And one of these is an ascetical practice. That means doing something which affects the body and the mind and the spirit in a harmonious way. So, for example, when we meditate, we are doing an ascetical practice, training the mind by learning to pay attention, by learning to set our mind on God's kingdom, not thinking about God, but being with God, and in God's presence. And we are also training our body to be integrated with the mind through stillness. So the body is still. We sit in a comfortable position so that we can sit without moving. And that stillness of the body has a direct influence on the stillness of the mind. Now, when we begin to meditate, our minds are very restless and distracted, and you discover that you can't say the mantra for more than 3 seconds before you become distracted by something. And in the same way, our bodies are often very nervous. We move, we find it difficult to sit still. But with practice, with regular exercise of this way of prayer, we notice a change. We notice that our minds are gradually becoming more quiet, more still, and more clear. And that means that we begin to reduce the level of stress and anxiety and confusion or turbulence that we often find mentally and emotionally. So when we sit to meditate, it's a little easier, step by step. It's a little easier for us to be still, to be in the present moment, and to pay attention. These are the essential elements of contemplation. Being in the present moment, not thinking of the past, not imagining the future, but just sitting and being ourselves in the present moment. And we do that. The second major element of contemplation is attention. Because we are distracted in modern life, we find it difficult to meditate. But meditation will help us to overcome this distraction, to reduce the distraction, and it will therefore help us to live in the pressures and the distractions of modern life more calmly and more peacefully. So it's important, I think, in the time of Lent is a time to reflect on this, to understand the combination combination and the integration of these different dimensions of our human nature. The physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual. Sometimes people say, why is it that Christianity is so out of touch with the body? Many young people will ask you that question.
Jadi tidak terhubung ke tubuh ya, teman itu seakan-akan terpisah dari tubuh.
Why is it that Christianity so often treats the body with suspicion or fear and sees it as a kind of a danger or a risk to our spiritual development? And a good question to ask ourselves begins with this. What is the sacred language of the Hindus? What is the sacred language of the Hindus? You know? What is it? Indians, what's their sacred language? No, what is the language, a sacred language? Like, not Hindi, no, Hindi is a secular language. The sacred language, Sanskrit. Thank you, there you are. Sanskrit. What is the sacred language of the Jews? Hebrew. What is the sacred language of the Muslim? Arabic. What is the sacred, be careful now with this question. What is the sacred language of the Christians? Love, yes. But that's a different, you're answering the question in a different way. Love, yes, of course. But that would be true of all the other religions as well. The sacred language in a special way of the Christian. Oh? Shalom? Peace, yeah? Oh. Sign of the cross. What a language. But, no, what? Aramaic? How many words in Aramaic do you know, apart from the mantra? We don't know the exact words that Jesus spoke. Actually, it's a very good thing that we don't know his exact words. Because if we knew his exact words, we would be so focused upon the words that we would forget the meaning.
Seandainya kita tahu, malah justru kita jadi fokusnya ke kata-kata dan bukan ke maknanya.
So, the words of Jesus were translated, were probably spoken in Aramaic, and then they were eventually written down in Greek, and then into Latin, and then into Indonesian, and then into every language of the planet. What is the particular special language of Christianity? The Eucharist, you're getting close, yeah? Well, when Jesus was born, what do we say happened? What was the, The Word became flesh. The Word became flesh. What is the Word? The Word was with God from the beginning. The Word was God. So God became a human incarnation. The essence of Christianity is the incarnation. It's the unique insight, it's the unique mystery of Christianity. God emptied himself, it says in St. Paul, he emptied himself in order to become human. And this is something
When you say that again, it's translating properly. So God entered himself? Emptied himself. Ya. Jadi Tuhan mengosongkan diri untuk bisa menjadi manusia.
Yeah, emptied himself. Yeah.
Yes.
That's how St. Paul describes the incarnation. Now, you might say, I don't know what that means. I don't know what it means. Nobody knows what it means. It means everything. This is the unique mystery. A mystery is something you cannot explain or prove, but you know that it's true. Something convinces you that this is true. And that is faith. So God is in love, for love, became a human being. The Word became flesh in the person, the unique individual of Jesus. So, what is the sacred language of Christianity? The flesh, the body, the human body. And that's why we give so much importance theologically to the body in Christianity. We believe that God became a living body, a living human being, and that means that it's a perfect translation now. I don't know if this is the translation that is happening on the screen is perfect. And that's why you have to be here to check it. But there is no perfect translation, really, from one language to another. There's always something lost in the translation. But most translations are rough translations. But the translation of the divine into the human in the person of Jesus is a perfect translation. Nothing is lost. So the divine is translated into the human, but nothing of the meaning of the divine is lost. That's the mystery of Christianity. And that's why during Lent we should be reflecting even more fully upon the mystery of our own existence and of our own, the miracle of our own body, mind, and spirit. Now, do we think of our body as being this miracle which enables us to know, love, and serve God? Now, at a certain age, I was watching some children running up and down the stairs somewhere the other day, and they were fearless, and they, with their little bodies, they were able to run fast and like little goats or animals, they could. And we wonder, or a great athlete achieving great success in their sport, or you watch a diver in the Olympics, the control and the precision and the beauty of the body when it is working at its perfection like that. It's a lot of work, But then we all know, most of us here, that the body begins to decline. We lose some of that energy of youth and some of that mobility, and then we get problems. We get illnesses, we get mobility problems, and so on. And then maybe the body doesn't seem so miraculous. But I think it is always miraculous. I mean, as I told you, I went through this medical treatment recently, and I touched moments where I'd never been more weak or in more pain sometimes. And I had never experienced that kind of physical condition before. But the result of it was that I am just amazed at the wonder, the miracle of the body. Yes, because it is healed, because I'm now more or less strong again, but also because it showed me how that unity, that harmony of body, mind, and spirit is the real miracle and the real message of our creation. We should never forget this.
Let me explain a little. Ya, jadi ketika Father Laurence sempat sakit, ya, merasakan betul kesakitan dan rasa tidak nyaman yang luar biasa. Tapi pada waktu yang sama, beliau juga merasakan itu luar biasa, ya, satu keajaiban yang berada dalam tubuh kita ini, dan kesatuan tubuh, pikiran, dan jiwa kita ini adalah suatu keajaiban besar yang Father Laurence rasakan. Kita tidak boleh lupa.
So, as I was saying, in Christianity we give a great importance to the body. The body itself is a way that we can share in the life of God, because the life of God is present in our body. And as we grow in the knowledge of God and the love of God, we experience that through the body and in the body as well. Meditation has a big effect on the way you understand the miracle of your own being, your own existence, including the body. Usually at a certain age, we start complaining about the body. We call it, somebody said to me the other day, it's like when you get to a certain age and you meet friends the same age, you have an organ recital. So the organs are the organs of the body, and you begin to recite, you begin to speak. Yeah, you know what happened to me, this and that, and that's what I'm feeling, and I've been to the doctor, and this is what he said.
Itu permainan kata, ya. Organ recital itu kan kalau kita ada pentas yang main organ gitu. Tapi ini organ tubuh, jadi di data gitu. Ya, kepala saya sakit, ininya gitu, maksudnya seperti itu.
So, no, we also know in the Christian wisdom that the body is going to be with us in some form for all eternity, because Christ rose in the body. It's a different kind of body, of course, otherwise he wouldn't have died. But that after death we believe that we are raised in the body, in some subtle body or spiritual body, and that for all eternity we are in a body, with a body. Now, So we ought to give great respect to the mystery of our life just by thinking about the body itself. Not just complaining about it, or complaining that we've lost some functions or some freedom or health, of the body, but seeing the fact that it is because we are embodied in a body, with a body, that we are an image of God. Now, this is basic Christian theology, very different from many other religions which see the body as something that is just discarded and at death when we move into a higher spiritual realm. So this is a unique understanding of Christianity, that the human body, the human person, is the image of God and a temple of the Holy Spirit. And that everything that we know of the life of Jesus, as we read the scriptures, shows us this mystery. Even in the face of death, and through death, and after death. So, just starting from a reflection on the human body, we can deepen our faith and our understanding, our sense of the mystery of Christ. And then we can go even further into that mystery when we say that Christ is in me. And I am in Christ. And that we, not just I, but we are the body of Christ. I was talking this morning about the synodal process, and why that was such a revolution, or is a revolution in the life of the church. And the reason is that it is taking very seriously the idea that the church is not an institution, not an intellectual system, but that we are the body of Christ. And meditation helps us to experience this. John Main said that meditation creates community. It shows us that we are connected with each other in a spiritual way, in a spiritual friendship. And we know this because when we meditate together with other people, or when we meet other meditators, who maybe even for the first time, we can feel a connection. And this connection is a sign that we are recognizing each other as part of the same family, part of the same body of Christ. And why is this important? It's important because it is true. And if we forget it, or we ignore it, or we deny it, then what are we left with except isolation and loneliness? Because we are not connected. Basically, we feel that we are alone, separate. And that is very painful. That is why so many people today feel so lonely.
Ya, jadi ada itu ya, kalau kita tidak terhubung betul-betul ya, rasanya terpisah. Jadi tidak, karena itu banyak yang menjadi kesepian ya.
And the World Health Organization recently has spoken about about loneliness as an epidemic. Part of that is due to technology. Technology has isolated us from each other. For example, I mean, I find I have a lot of emails, but I notice that emails and social media give you about maybe at best a 50% success rate in communicating what you want to communicate. But you really need to be in conversation or in touch with the person that you're trying to communicate with before you can really understand each other. So this loneliness that we feel in our modern world, which is related, I think, to our unhealthy addiction to technology or to the media, to social media and the media. This loneliness, what is the cure for it? And how can Lent help us to understand how to live a more healthy life? I think the cure for loneliness, I don't know if you can catch this in Indonesian, the cure for loneliness is solitude. Good. So loneliness means that we feel separate, we feel opposed or at a distance from other people. Solitude, on the other hand, is what we experience in meditation when we do the work of contemplation, the work of self-acceptance, the work of coming to self-knowledge. And in meditation then, we come to discover and accept our own uniqueness. Every one of us here is a totally unique creation of God. God is infinitely creative. More than any human artist could be. I have a friend who paints paintings, kind of geometrical shapes, and they're very imaginative and they're very. She's always coming up with new shapes, new designs, and I can't believe that they're all so different. But that is only a small reflection of the ingenuity of God, the creativity of God. Just the people in this room alone is amazing. The uniqueness of each human being and the value of each human being is equal. So we are unique and we are all equal to each other because of that uniqueness. And that should awaken in us a sense of wonder and a sense of gratitude for the gift of our being, the gift of life. So much of the time we complain or we focus upon our limitations or upon what we don't have or what we've lost. But at any moment, we can recover that joy of a child in discovering the world for the first time.
Ya, jadi meskipun jadi masalah kesepian di dunia ini malah justru kita ketika kita merasakan kesendirian ya, solitude itu beda rasanya. Kalau kesepian itu kita terpisah ya, jadi kepingin tidak terkoneksi, tidak terhubung dengan orang lain. Ketika kita sendirian, kita terhubung dengan diri kita sendiri. Ketika kita terhubung pada diri kita sendiri, mengenali diri kita sendiri, kita tuh unik ya, kita bisa mengagumi ya kreativitas ciptaan Tuhan yang sedemikian, tidak ada orang yang sama di seluruh dunia ini. Justru kita menjadi terhubung dengan semua orang dalam keunikan masing-masing itu, dalam misteri keberadaan kita, kreativitas Tuhan itu. Jadi seperti kekaguman seorang anak ya, wow gitu kok bisa.
So one of the advantages of living in the northern hemisphere is that you associate Lent with spring, with new life, new growth.
Jadi kalau di belahan bumi utara ya, yang ada 4 musim, biasanya masa Paskah itu dikaitkan dengan musim semi. Bagaimana itu ada kehidupan baru yang tumbuh, yang tadinya gersang, musim dingin terus mulai bermunculan.
And that's why wherever you live, the purpose of Lent is to awaken again in us this sense of wonder and gratitude at the mystery of life.
Ya, jadi fungsi Prapaskah, tujuan Prapaskah adalah untuk mengembalikan dalam diri kita rasa takjub, rasa kekaguman akan misteri kehidupan.
So, John Rain said that the essential ascesis of the Christian life is prayer. Prayer, in other words, is the basic exercise, the basic training that we need to do in order to keep healthy, keep our body, our mind, and our spirit in harmony.
Jadi kalau tadi dikatakan bahwa asketis itu adalah latihan. Latihan apa yang paling utama yang disampaikan oleh John Rain adalah latihan utama itu adalah doa. Jadi itu bagaimana doa itu membantu menjaga kesehatan, tubuh, pikiran, semuanya ya.
So, if we do something like give up having a dessert or chocolate for Lent, it's not to punish ourselves. God doesn't want us to punish ourselves, but it's to train ourselves to be more aware of the good things in life and of our need for self-control and moderation.
Ya, jadi ketika misalnya tidak makan makanan kecil gitu ya, snack dessert ya, itu bukan berarti kita tuh lagi dihukum gitu, bukan seperti itu. Tapi dengan kita tidak konsumsinya tuh justru kita tuh jadi lebih bisa, selain mengendalikan diri itu jadi ada rasa menghargai kenikmatan yang kita lewat tubuh kita itu.
Of course, there are many things we have to do in order to live a harmonious, healthy life. We need to eat well. We need to sleep well. We need to do physical exercise. We need to keep our mental health in good shape as well. And we also need, I think, a spiritual practice, a contemplative practice that kind of acts to coordinate all of these different elements. Meditation coordinates the health of the whole person. Okay, I'm just finish. And one other aspect of Lent that we could reflect on is how it affects our stress, our levels of stress and anxiety. And that means time. If you're feeling like when Martha was in the kitchen and she became very distracted and then became angry and then became sad and came into the room where Jesus was in an angry state, that's because she felt time was her enemy. She was being overwhelmed by her work. She didn't have time to perform or finish her work to her satisfaction. And this is such a common feeling in our world today, that we have so many things to do, so many choices, so many options, so many responsibilities, so many distractions. So the time of Lent is a time where we can reduce the stress and anxiety simply by changing the way we experience time. I was just told that we should stop here, so I'm taking extra time to tell you about the importance of time. And I think, I know we're going to leave it to 45. Yeah. Yeah, we leave it to 45. No? Yeah. Yeah. Right. So, this is a very good example. I'm beginning to feel stressed because, I'm 15. Look, there we go. But if we leave at 2:45, that's what we do for the other half hour. Oh, the question must be okay. So there's always more to do, right? So, what am I saying? I'm saying that if in Lent, if we give more attention to the practice of meditation, to the exercise that we do when we meditate, then we will grow in an experience of the body, our human body, as a essential element of our spiritual journey. And this will awaken in us a sense of wonder and a sense of joy. And Lent is meant to be a preparation for the joy of Easter. So we should begin to start feeling this joy now, or increasing our capacity for joy. And normally, the other thing that meditation does in Lent, especially if we think about it, is to regulate our time better. We know that the recommendation from this tradition is to meditate twice a day. Morning, about between 20 and 30 minutes. In the evening, between 20 and 30 minutes. Every day. John Main says it may take you time, it may take you years before you really get into that rhythm of meditation every day. But don't give up. Because the second meditation, most people can do one meditation a day, but the second meditation is very important for achieving the full effect. It's like taking certain kinds of medication. You know, you've got to take it morning and evening. And the second meditation of the day will teach you, if you're not doing it regularly, during Lent, try to build it into your day as well as you can. If you can't, you can't.
Ini dari tadi tulisnya masa Paskah tuh maksudnya prapaskah ya, mau pastikan aja.
And if you can't do the second meditation, or the two meditations a day, then ask yourself, you don't feel guilty about it. You don't have to tell anybody. It's only between you and God, or you and yourself. But you don't have to feel guilty about it. But just ask yourself why. Well, first of all, say, do I want to do it twice a day? And if you say no, okay, you can still go to heaven. You might be, I would say, you might be in a more comfortable seat if you meditate twice a day. You'll still have problems, you still have a journey to make, but your daily life will be easier because the meditation as part of the daily rhythm of your life, twice a day, has shown you, is doing something. It really does regulate your body, your mind, and your spirit. So that's something that we have to discover for ourselves. But Lent is an opportunity to focus on these kind of questions and to look at the balance of our lives, to look at the priorities in our lives, and to look where are we in our spiritual journey. What we are recommending people to do this year, in fact, which is the centenary of John May's birth, is to all our national communities to do two things. One is to deepen your practice, to deepen your meditation. And the best way to do that is to make sure that you are meditating at least twice a day. That would be to deepen it. But also perhaps to have a retreat, some retreats on the WCCM Indonesia schedule, which are up on the board. Take time for retreat. Take time for some spiritual reading. And be regular with those times. Regular practice makes a huge difference to your sense of balance. So first of all, maybe now in the beginning of Lent, focus upon the deepening of your practice. But also, if we deepen it, we should also focus upon the expansion of the community and the way we share this gift with other people. Because in fact, in order to share it with more people, which is our way of serving people, our way of giving generously to others, then that sharing more generously needs a deeper place of practice. In other words, we need to deepen our practice if we are to share the gift with more people. So it's a way that we can see the opportunity of this season of Lent to grow in self-knowledge and self-awareness, and also in the mysteries of our faith, what it really means to be on this journey. And I'm glad to say that I'm so free from stress at the moment that I have 5 minutes extra, which I'm going to take, not to speak anymore, but we'll take 5 minutes of silence, and then we'll meditate. No, we'll take 5 minutes meditation, short meditation, and then we'll have Q&A. No, I can just... Okay, so let's, why don't we just stand for a moment, wait a minute. Let's try to keep silent, and we'll stand and have a stretch, and then we'll sit down and meditate for a few minutes. Lean back a little bit without falling over. And then just open up the body. Some simple movements like this. Then, as you stand straight, feel that there's a line from the crown of your head to the heels of your feet. And it's a line of beautiful energy, enabling us to stand upright. And just relax your shoulders. Please move your hands around a little bit to loosen up your joints. And then just stand still for a moment as you become aware of your breath. And as you pay attention to your breath, as you breathe in and breathe out, you are taking the first step in taking the attention off your thoughts. Meditation is not what you think. That's why we let go of our thoughts when we meditate. So this is just a little preparation for the actual practice of meditation. So let's sit down. Then let's just remind ourselves of the very simple teaching. Sit straight with your back straight. Relax your shoulders. Close your eyes lightly. Put your hands on your lap or on your knees. Relax the muscles of your face. Your jaw, your forehead. And then very calmly begin to say your mantra. This wonderful little path from the mind to the heart. Every time you say your mantra, you are taking another step on this path into the inner room, cave of your heart. Say the mantra in rhythm with your breath, if that's comfortable. You can say the mantra as you breathe in, Ma, Ra, Na, Tha, and then breathe out in silence. Or, if you're more comfortable, you can say the first two syllables as you breathe in, Ma, Ra, and the second two, Na, Tha, as you breathe out. You give your full attention to the word and listen to the word as you say it. And then the word will find its own rhythm. You say the word gently, without force, without too much effort. Say it gently, lightly. Listen to the word as you say it, and say it faithfully as you come back to it whenever you become distracted. Practice you might like to think of during Lent is to take opportunities during the day when you are in between events, or you're waiting for the elevator, or you are on the escalator, or you are waiting for the dentist. Often we waste those moments in between things, and we just daydream, or we look at the advertisements. But what you can also do is use those as times for short time of prayer, and just say the mantra, allow the mantra to rise in your heart during those moments. And it's a wonderful gift. The pharmaceutical industry has not yet come up with anything like it to make you feel better. To be able to just make contact in that simple way with your own heart, and to feel the peace, the grace, the joy of Christ with you at all times. And it also helps you to understand the mystery of continuous prayer, where we are, in fact, temples of the Holy Spirit, which means that the prayer of Jesus is continuing in us all the time, continuous. So those little moments of short meditation in between events can just help us to make contact with that prayer of the Spirit within us. Good. So,
Bapak Ibu, kami persilakan bagi yang ingin bertanya, angkat jari. Oh, masih banyak ya? Aduh, waktunya tinggal
in Jakarta. I will not ask a question, but just to share my experience. After I joined on retreat almost 6 years or 7 years ago, every I said the mass, I invite all people after communion to take time 1 minute to keep in silence. Maybe the one from Agibri, yeah. I always take time after communion to keep in silence, to feel, to express, to the presence of God in Holy Communion. Is this okay, Father, or not? Thank you.
Ya, tadi pertanyaannya jelas ya, itu sudah komuni, Romo memberikan waktu 1 menit kepada umat supaya dalam hening. Nah, Romo menanyakan itu.
Thank you very much. No, I think that is exactly what we should be doing, introducing this contemplative experience or dimension into the Mass, into, in fact, all of our sacramental life and our ordinary life. And the time of meditation, the time after communion is the most natural time that we should do this. And I always feel that if I go to, if you go too quickly from the end of the communion into the final prayer and blessing, you're missing a great opportunity for a few moments of real presence, real presence. And the real presence is within us in a sacramental way, and so we should become present to that. Thank you.
Jadi setuju sekali ya bahwa ketika kita dalam sakramen, bagaimana kita menghidupi keheningan itu, memberikan waktu untuk benar-benar hadir, itu sangat luar biasa dan dalam keseharian kita juga.
And in the Vatican Council documents on the liturgy, it says the purpose of the liturgy is to develop in the people of God a contemplative orientation.
Itu ada dalam dokumen Vatican Council sebetulnya untuk meningkatkan kontemplasi, ya, orientasi kontemplasi dalam setiap orang.
Baik, kita lanjut ke pertanyaan kedua. Silakan Bapak.
Thank you, Reverend Father Freeman, for this wonderful chance. My name is Hans from our local community in Jakarta. I've been wanting to ask this question since the very start of the first session, but since the time is limited, I will try to address it as best. So, in the first session and in the continuation of the second session, you have said that we need to guard, not to guard, we need to develop our own fruit of contemplation and to discover the goodness of our own gift of being. But on the other hand, our Christian community are exactly not the perfect one, and there are no perfect religious community in the world. And most people inside all kinds of Christian community would incline to some kind of a more utilitarian belief that the will of the many must first be upheld before the means of the individual. And how do we have to guard our own fruit of contemplation and know the wisdom to balance our own means of guarding it and to share the gift of contemplation? Jesus Christ himself had said that love your God with your own heart, with your whole being, and the second is to love others as we have loved ourselves. Most of us, we have no capability to love ourselves, and we are stuck between the reality of guarding our own gift and to share it with others. How do we maintain the wisdom? Thank you.
Oke, coba saya simpulkan sedikit ya. Jadi ini menanyakan tentang keseimbangan antara kita menjaga keunikan dan gift ya, karunia yang kita rasakan dalam diri kita sendirian, inner being, hakikat diri kita itu, dengan realita bahwa kita berada di dalam suatu komunitas, masyarakat, dan ada kepentingan dan lain-lain. Itu kadang-kadang kita merasa kehilangan jati diri kita gitu ya, seperti itu ya, kurang lebih ya. Oke. So it's about adapting and staying yourself. So you have this gift of yourself, your being that you gain from this, but then you have to live in a religious in a community that doesn't necessarily allow you to live in that way. So how do you balance the need to be, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Good question. I think you have to recognize that you belong to a minority. You belong to a minority group. And in other words, the dominant culture in the society around us is opposed to this contemplative path. It wants to reduce it to a kind of well-being or feel-good or take it easy kind of attitude. And that's better, I think, is it? So I think, just accept that we're part of a minority, and accept that you have this calling. It's a calling. We all have the calling, actually. The same call, but you are fortunate to be able to be aware of it, and so respond to it as generously as you can, as faithfully as you can. And then you will feel that you're part of a subculture within the major culture. And it's through a subculture that, so a minority of people, that real change happens, real revolution happens.
Oke, di sini minoritas bukan berarti kita Katolik minoritas gitu ya, tapi maksudnya di dunia ini tidak banyak yang kontemplatif. Jadi kita tuh sebagai orang-orang yang terpanggil untuk kontemplatif, otomatis jadi seperti aneh ya, seperti lain sendiri gitu. Tetapi jangan kecil hati, karena justru di dalam satu karunia yang kita dapatkan ketika kita menikmati kontemplasi itu, kita bisa membawa perubahan gitu. Jadi kita berada di dalam komunitas kecil, tapi ada ya seperti bagian kecil dari sesuatu yang lebih besar gitu ya. Nah itu pelan-pelan kita bisa jadi membawa perubahan di situ.
And this doesn't mean that you're isolated. It means that you belong in a healthy way to a subculture or to a community that may be small in numbers, but can be very effective and a powerful way of serving the well-being of other people. So, first of all, feel that there's a calling that you are listening to by undertaking this discipline. And secondly, see it as a way of that you're doing this through the community, with the community, in the community.
Ya, jadi gini kenyataannya kita tuh ada komunitasnya juga ya. Meskipun komunitas ini mungkin kecil di dalam komunitas yang lebih besar, tapi bahwa nggak sendirian dan itu menjadi bagian dari membawa perubahan yang membuat semua orang juga ikut terbantu pada akhirnya.
Karena melalui sesi ini kita dikasih dua visi. Visi yang pertama, ada dua visi yang ingin disampaikan pada hari ini. Yang menurut saya ada dua visi. Visi yang pertama itu adalah mengenal Yesus Kristus lebih baik. Kalau kita mengenal Yesus, maka kita bisa mengenal diri kita sendiri. Tetapi untuk mengenal itu ada hambatan, ada kontradisinya, yaitu ego, yaitu yang diperlihatkan oleh Mata.
Mohon maaf Pak, pertanyaannya langsung karena waktunya tinggal.
Saya cuma mau bertanya apa artinya, apa benar? Itu jawabannya ya, apa pendapat ini benar. Karena pelajaran yang diberikan itu sudah kita bahas di komunitas kita.
Boleh saya terjemahkan dulu Pak? Jadi biar
Ya.
So he's trying to verify with you of the lessons that he gave, which is the first one is this vision that we need to get to know Jesus and get to know ourselves, and that by getting to know Jesus we get to know ourselves. But in that process, there is our own ego, and Martha is like our ego, and this is what they have been discussing in their community. So we want to check with you.
Hambatan itu bisa diatasi kalau kita menuruti sarannya dari John itu. Ikutilah cara Yesus pergi menuju pergi satu tempat. Ini saran untuk mengatasi hambatan itu.
So he sees that by going to solitude and it's a way of overcoming the problems with the ego, inhibiting that encounter.
Yes, thank you.
Kenapa kita harus menuruti Yesus? Karena bagaimana strateginya? Maka strateginya kita mengundang Yesus ke dalam diri kita.
Baik, cukup ya Pak. Kita tunggu jawabannya dulu. Oke, silakan.
So how do we do that? We invite Jesus to come into our lives, into ourselves.
Yeah.
Katanya cukup sederhana. Ya, dan itu ya udah, saya cepat aja. Jadi
Part 3.
tadi itu kenapa kita undang Yesus itu caranya gimana? Menyebut kata Tuhan.
Okay, that's how we invite Jesus, by saying the mantra.
Ya, kalau kita lakukan.
Okay, you're losing your audience here. Wait a minute. Okay, let's give us we only have 5 minutes to deal with a major question, but we need to pay attention. So, you raised the question of the ego, which is a very important question to understand on our spiritual journey. And Lent is a good moment for us to become friends with our ego. The ego is not a bad thing in itself. It is part of our... Sorry, I can't concentrate if you're talking. my weakness, I'm sorry. But the ego is part of our nature. The ego develops at a very young age. Jesus had an ego. And the ego is a necessary part of our psychological human development. It is especially important in helping us to individuate, to separate, for example, from our parents, gradually and to be able to make relationships on our own, as Jesus said, to be father and mother and so on. So, and the ego also helps us to reconnect to people or to make new relationships. So let's first of all begin with a positive understanding of the ego. However, because the ego is responsible for this very delicate and sensitive part of our human life, separation and relationship, it is easily wounded. And where the ego can become dysfunctional or unhealthy, because perhaps we have not we've not received the love that we needed, or that we have experienced rejection, loss, or betrayal. These are very painful wounds to our feelings and to ourselves. And they leave a mark on the ego. And then the ego wants to defend itself from future hurt and pain. And so the ego will often overreact. Maybe it becomes in two ways. It can become very aggressive, in which case you will probably go to politics as your career. A joke. Okay, so the ego may become very aggressive and controlling and pushy, or the ego becomes very insecure, very weak, and is frightened to connect with other people. Either way, the ego is not functioning as it should, and therefore the ego, we recognize the ego in other people very quickly, but we usually don't recognize it in ourselves until it has too late. So the meditation, I think, heals the ego. It doesn't destroy the ego. It's a mistake to use violence against the ego. We're just doing more harm to ourselves. And that's not the way to heal. This raises the question, very briefly, it raises the question of sin. And what do we know that there is sin in the world, there is evil in the world. How do we respond to that? How do we understand it for example, even in ourselves? I think if you think of sin as in a legalistic way, legally, you're breaking a rule. And if you break a rule, then you will be punished. That's what you expect as a child. Don't get caught breaking a rule because you will be punished. But in the early church, sin was not regarded as a legal problem. It was more of a problem of health. Sin was a sign that the ego was not functioning properly, and therefore it needed to be healed. It was approached more with a medical approach, a healing approach, rather than with punishment and legalism. And Jesus says, I have not come to judge the world, but to save the world. I mean, that's how God looks on sin, not to punish. God does not punish. God cannot punish. He loves us. But he heals. And sometimes, as we all know, if you're in medical treatment or in other ways, sometimes it hurts. The healing process can hurt you. It's painful. But it's not punishing. It's not punishing you. So, I think to understand the ego is very important in order to understand the essential teaching of Jesus and the purpose of the Spirit, which is not to punish, but to heal. And therefore, it's really by experiencing love, the love of God for us, which awakens in us our capacity for love. We discover that we become more capable of loving. And that's the real fruit of meditation. We meditate in order to increase our capacity for love. And so, if you've been meditating for 20 years and you don't become a more loving person, then we give you your money back.